bought this bilge pump to try. It's inexpensive, it's small. I wanted a small pump for the primary pump, which is the one that goes off first. Usually it's just a little bit of rainwater or a spilled beverage or something that goes down into the bilge, and you don't want to have something with a high power consumption being the first line of defense. That's what the secondary electric bilge pump is for. But looking to replace the primary right now, it has a 3/4 inch outlet on it, which is the same as the plumbing I currently have. So we're going to see if this one can move water at a decent rate or not. At least better than the one I have in there. So the strainer comes off the bottom, so that the idea is you mount this piece in there. It is the base and it is the strainer. You then, drop your pump into place and it clicks in, and that protects the intake from small debris, or actually medium-sized debris, it looks like. I have some 3/4 inch hose with which I'm going to bypass the current bilge pump and hook it into the line just after the bilge pump, and see if this pumps out water at a higher rate than the current one. Okay, now this is my temporary hookup, just to see what kind of volume the pump will throw. Okay, at this point, that's pretty good. Not much of a rise, but now we'll try it through the regular plumbing and see what happens. So I just disconnected the outlet side of the current bilge pump, which is this diaphragm pump right here, which doesn't pump very much water. It's also very, very noisy when it runs. The vibrations, it's just really noisy. Anyway, so now I'm going to hook up my temporary test setup for this pump, and we'll see what kind of volume we can get with it. We're using the current plumbing. So there's my temporary tie-in with my hose clamps on, because I don't want that falling apart and making a mess in here any more than it already is a mess. So now to hook up the bilge pump itself. Yeah, you can see the pump down in the water. It's not bad for a temporary test. It's not mounted, it's just sitting there. Gravity's holding it in. This would never do for a real installation, but it should do for a test. And that's a whole lot of nothing. I'm guessing the problem is in the piping, not so much in the pump pressure. It's nice and quiet though, so it's not moving any water. Here are some of the wood parts that my daughter and her friend refinished for the boat. Let's make a call. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thanks. So why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing?
You got it.
Hello, my name is Kelly and I am Chris's daughter, and I have been helping him with some of the wooden pieces on our boat. This is one piece especially that needed a lot of TLC. This piece was behind the mast on the floor, and it was resting on top of a metal plate that my dad actually showed in a previous video. The issue with that spot was that water was coming down the mast and pooling on top of that plate, and then this piece of wood was just sitting in that water continuously. So the piece needed to be completely rebuilt. The plywood was separating, it was all black and moldy and it stank. So we came up with this awesome idea that instead of making the piece out of wood again, which would lead to the same problems, we would make the back this plastic, and this piece of plastic is about the same thickness as the plywood. Then we took the edges that were on the plywood, stripped them off, and we screwed them in and glued them to the edges of the plastic piece. And then what you see on top is this creation. Actually, I can't take credit for it. My friend had the idea. But we bought teak veneer, stuck it onto the piece of plastic, and then we cut these little strips of holly veneer, stuck them on top, sanded them within an inch of their life, and then I varnished the absolute crap out of it to help them stay down. So if you run your hands over it, you can feel they're a little bit raised, but really not bad, and no one really walks right there anyways, because there's a table that goes around the mast right around there, so I'm not too worried about feet kicking these up. And I'm really pleased with how it came out. It doesn't match exactly because the teak veneer that I bought is not quite as warm as the rest of the teak in the boat, but that's okay. There were some other issues with this piece. You can see it split here, so we tried our best to fill it with wood glue. And then I'm not sure what caused this discoloration. We sanded it down pretty far, and it never turned the same color as the rest of the wood. I'm using an ultra clear varnish on these pieces, which really brings out the beautiful tones in the wood, and I'm really happy with how it's been coming out. So anyways, back to you, Dad.
So this is the Dodger. This is the cover that goes up over the hatchway of the boat when we're sailing, and it's to keep water from going into the hatch. Nice little place to have some shade, etc. But there's two windows here that are broken. This one here, you can see the crack lines in it, I believe, and this one, which is more pronounced. You can see the holes in there. So I'm going to go talk to a guy about who does this sort of repair work, who by reputation does some really nice work, and we'll see what he has to say about it. So I just came back from the local canvas shop. It was just a walking distance away. I carried this thing all the way up there. Anyway, I didn't realize till I got there that the piece I wanted him to look at, I could have just disconnected from it because there's zippers on it, and that's I should have checked that first. That's a symptom of not knowing the boat very well. So anyway, I left the piece that needs to work on with him, and he said he'd do it for about $200. So that works well. One of the reasons I'm bringing a small job to the gentleman is that I'm considering doing more canvas work on the boat, and I kind of like to work with somebody on a small job first before bringing them a big job, because I want to make sure that the work is good. I've heard his work is very good, but I also want to know if he's how easy he is to work with. So anyway, so this is the remaining portion of the Dodger, which I'm going to store again. New Englanders of my generation were basically brought up and taught never to really talk about money. Don't talk about how much you paid for something or how much you make, etc. But I realized that if you want to know what boating life is like, part of it is the expense. So I'm going to try to be better about that going forward. Mention what things cost as I show them, so that the impression you get of boating and how much it costs is as accurate as I can make it. So this package of LED bulbs I bought, it was a package of 8 bulbs, and it cost $10. And 2 out of the 8 didn't work. I ordered another package of the same things to put in the remaining fixtures. So this is the pump that goes under the sink in the head. I painted the inside after wire brushing the metal. These pumps new go for around $250 to $300. They're very solid. There's two of these pumps on the boat. One of them is in the cockpit, accessible from the cockpit, I should say, to pump. So, and it's a bilge pump. So the person in the cockpit sitting at the wheel can use the handle and pump water out of the bilge in case of emergency. This one is the for offshore use only sewage ejection pump. It basically just empties the holding tank to the outside. The previous owner never used it. The owner before that probably did, because it was so corroded and whatnot that I had to wire brush the inside and try to paint it. Rebuild kit for this thing, which is a new diaphragm, new flappers. That costs like $50. And for this pump, because the one of the pieces inside was so corroded, I had to replace it. This was another 50 bucks for this thing that goes here. So this pump is, it's becoming expensive. The pump on the outside, the one that's just for water, all it needed was a regular rebuild kit. In my experience so far in this area, I've had to rebuild these pumps about every 5 years or so, so it's not so bad. At least they last quite a while. Ha! I have to take that out again because I didn't put in the gasket, which is sitting right next to me. Now, this piece goes over that hole with a retainer. It looks like this. Now that's all pretty. Now the diaphragm goes next. There's another one of those pieces in the basic service kit to replace the diaphragm. Now there's a pair of plates that go over and under on this diaphragm with a piece here that the pump pulls on. I mean the handle pulls on. So that piece was basically corroded beyond belief. So there's another repair kit I had to get, which was another 40 bucks. It has the two plates and a new cross piece. Anyway, so even though I haven't quite spent money that equals the cost of the pump, we're getting close on this one. The other one, no, just needed the one basic repair kit. But once these parts are all on there, it'll be like new. Basically, the only thing I didn't replace is the body of the pump. Getting ready to put the pump back in. One of these things is not like the others. I lost one of these nuts somewhere. So this fits, but it's a locking nut, but I figured adding a locking nut where a non-locking nut was used shouldn't be a problem, I hope. So I'm going to go forward with that. So the pump is now in place and rebuilt. And when we launch the boat, we'll be able to put water in the holding tank and test it a little bit just to make sure it works. Just enough to make sure it works, nothing more. So now it's time for the long-awaited replacement of the sink. So we have a new piece for the bottom, for the drain. This cost like 16 bucks, I think. 12 or 16 bucks. And we're using the same hoses, so that's the only expense for this thing. So the plan is, and I stress plan because who knows what we're going to end up doing, is so this bottom of the elbow has a ring on it that loosens up, comes loose. This is threaded, and you can see that. So this fits into there. And then the ring goes back on, and the sink should be in between. So the idea is you take this apart. This is inside the sink, this is out. We attach it. We put the sink in place. So we don't tighten this ring, so it's not tight inside the sink. We put the sink in place, get everything adjusted just the way we want it. Then we back this ring off again, take this apart, put some sealant in, put this back in, and then tighten this ring up against the bottom of the metal sink, and it should hold it in place nicely, and it should be a nice watertight seal. So that's the plan. So step one, it's the sink, nothing's tight. It's just flopping around in there, but it can't go through. Now we go to the head and try to fit it. So I have the sink loosely fitted in, make sure everything fits. This is in place, the drain hose is long enough to reach it, everything is good. I'm ready with my sealant for going around the edge of the sink, and then for here, as we talked about. But not doing it today, I have to go home. And tomorrow's Easter, so due to family involvement, I may or may not get back.